Well, that's the thing about stories like yours is that they're very powerful, and when you can share that in a very vulnerable way, it's going to be amazing what comes of it. Greetings, Red Tie community. It's the ball guy in the red tie, John Butler with the Red Tie community, and I am the favoritist host of the Red Tie community show. You know why?
Why?
I'm the only host of the Red Tie community show.
I had a feeling that was the answer.
Yes. Win by default. I win. That's how it goes. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest who has an incredible story, both of success and struggle. Mm-hmm. And we're going to dive into some pretty dark valleys maybe, but also contrasted with some of the highest peaks in the world. So Catherine Schiffer from DP Properties, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
No problem. So, that's what I love about doing this show is that on Facebook, we see people, we kind of get little glimpses of their story, little tidbits and stuff like that. And, we see some muscles every once in a while, maybe not from my page, but from your page. So let's get started in this.
Okay.
How did you get into real estate? First of all, let's start there.
So I'm a GED girl.
All right.
Start
Good
off
enough
with.
diploma.
Yeah. I graduated with 2 babies on each hip and a toddler.
Wow.
And went from there to, of course, I was raising my children, and I was at home, and I noticed that the apartment community that we were living in Escondido, the office started closing on the weekends, and so I needed to get out of my house. So,
kids will do that to you, yeah.
Just for a little while. So I went to the manager and I asked her. I said, "Hey, what's going on? Why is the office closing?" She said, "The girl quit." I said, "What do you need?" She goes, "I need someone to answer the phones and open a door and show the property." I said, "I can do all that." And so she let me start working in the office 2 days a week. And then 3 months later, she came to me and said that she was going to be leaving and that there would be a bunch of resumes coming over the fax machine. I just dated myself a little bit, the fax machine. And so I'm like, "Well, can I put in a resume?" And she said, "What the heck, go ahead." So I submitted my resume, and on my resume I had a couple years at the Olive Garden. I had domestic engineer, because that's what I was. Right. And I had a little bit, and I had gone to Merritt College and got a little front office experience, a trade school. And lo and behold, I got the job, and I started working on 88 units. And within 12 months, I was assistant manager on 250 units. Wow. And then within the next year, I was the manager of that community. And for 7 years, I built my way from answering phones and 88 units on the weekends in Escondido to a corporate liaison, who I would go towards the end of my property management career. So I was an apartment manager for a long time. And towards the end of that, I would go to properties that were failing financially. There was low tenancy, high crime. So I'd go out to the property, take me about 6 to 8 months. I'd turn over, I'd get the income back up, I'd get the property filled back up, get the riffraff out, restaff the property, and then move on to my next project. And so that's where I ended with the property management career. And I was also, during that time, I'd come home to my kids, "We're going to be millionaires." Guess how? Tupperware.
Yeah.
Jafra. Quick Star, Amway. I've done it all.
Monavie.
Monavie, did it all. I did it all. So I have that entrepreneur spirit. Yeah. And I knew that what I was doing wasn't forever, but I had no idea how I would ever get out of that until we moved up to Temecula, and I was at church. And I was talking to one of my friends at church and sharing with her a desire on my heart to open a property management company here in Temecula. And she told me that her husband was a broker, and so we sat down. I talked to him for a few minutes. He said, "Sorry, I'm not into trust accounts. Don't want the whole, don't want it." And then about 3 weeks later, he came back to me and said, "Let's have a chat." And that was in 2005, September of 2005. And then so he decided to take me on and have me open up this property management company, and that's how we started up here.
So for those who don't know, in real estate, there's lots of avenues of real estate. There's commercial real estate, there's residential real estate, buying and selling houses, which a lot of people are familiar with. But then property management is a beast unto itself.
It is.
It really takes a very specific personality to do it well.
Yeah.
You have to be detail-oriented, you have to be friendly, you have to be a people person, but you have to have that organizational skills. So it really sounds like you have a lot of all of those aspects to you.
I have a little bit of a lot of those. I'm a people person, and I'm friendly. I'm honest, and people trust me. You know, I have that face, that likable face, and so that's kind of what gets it started for me. I have a great team.
That's
you know,
awesome.
it's not, I can't do everything perfectly, but my team does really well.
Yeah. So do you have any interesting like tenant stories? Any like horror stories?
So 2 years ago, I had a tenant move into one of my Fallbrook listings, and I was at the beach, and I got a call over the weekend and said that my tenant's pit bull had gone into the neighbor's house and ate her cat on the living room floor in front of her, and she was 90 years old.
Oh, wow.
Number one, we don't allow pit bulls.
Yeah.
Number two, this was a no pet house. So we didn't even know that there was a pet there. So that was a pretty traumatizing event. And unfortunately, the only way that the homeowner would not sue the owner and the tenant was if that tenant put his dog down. So he had to put his dog down, which was really, really sad for everybody. But that was pretty traumatizing story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever been like shot at?
I haven't, but I've been threatened, and I've had people climb over my desk. I mean, I was running a property in Highland. Yeah, I mean, we had dead bodies out in our corners.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So I always seen Escondido, always racy down there. Highland, San Bernardino. For a little while, I was blessed with Laguna area for a little while, but it wasn't for long.
Kind of higher end tenancy and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to be shooting at you.
No,
on the first of the
not
month.
up there.
Yeah.
But no, I've never had a gun. I've been threatened though, for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's the thing with tenants, especially because if you get a great tenant, it's fantastic. You know, rental properties can be good cash flow cows and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But man, if you get a bad tenant in there, they can make your life very difficult.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah.
For you as the manager, for you, you know, the landlord and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's we are. My goal, I'm really strict on my upfront qualification process. My homes might sit on the market a little bit longer, but I'm not looking to put a body in your home. I'm looking to put a good tenant in your home. So we're, and my history in the corporate part of property management is what really trained me up the way I am. So we're strict on the credits, we're strict on the qualifications, and I just want a good solid person in there who will take care of the home, the homeowner's biggest asset. Right. Some of us, our biggest asset is our homes,
right.
And so I'm putting someone in there who's going to maintain this asset. So somewhere down the road, that owner can sell. So I have those objectives in mind when I'm placing a tenant. It's not just to get my commission.
Yeah.
It's to make sure this home is being taken care of. And then, if all goes well, then when that seller is ready to sell, then I'm the one that they look at.
That's right. Because you built that relationship. You put in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So how many properties are you currently managing?
We have a little over 100 right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big portfolio.
Yeah. It's a manageable portfolio. You know, it's I've thought at times before that I wanted to be big, and I'll be as big as God wants me to be. And then I'll just bring the team on to handle it. But, right now at my stage in life, I'm really comfortable with where we're at, and getting 6 or 7 listings a year out of it, and the property management. And it's a nice 6-figure income. I don't have to work too hard. And it gives me the time and the freedom to do my passions. So that's what I love about real estate. And because obviously with Quickstar, Jafra, I was looking for freedom.
Yeah.
All I've been looking for is freedom. And I was able to find freedom in real estate.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
And that's what draws so many people to real estate is because they watch the TV shows and like, oh, that looks so easy. They're sitting by the pool and they're making millions of dollars because they just answered their phone once or twice during the show and it was that easy. Because real estate's really easy, right?
Yeah.
But as we see, in this local area, there's over 5,000 real estate agents, and was Association of Realtors say within 2 years, 88% of them fail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a tough statistic. Yeah. So the fact that you, as a single mom, making it on your own way and building your own career out of it, that says a lot about that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I have a overactive. What do they call it? A hyperactive.
The ADD thing?
Yeah, no, it's just this drive to be better.
Right.
This constant drive to be better, and maybe that's it's a little dysfunction in there, but it works for me.
So where do you think that drive came from?
Probably came from my childhood. You know, I was I lived in a very unsafe home when I was little. So instead of collapsing to that, and I did for a little while, I collapsed to that and bought into their dogma. But I think the drive there was a drive, and still there's something more. There's something more, and I've always had this thing, and there's something more. There's that I'm supposed to be doing, that I'm supposed to be going. Even in my days, and we'll get to that when I'm a recovered addict, and in my days sitting on my living room floor, I've been up for 5 days thinking I was going to die of a heart attack, and still there's something more. There's been a drive, there's been a pull, a compulsion.
A sense of destiny.
Yes, there has been. There has been.
So let's you've had an incredible career and you're very successful, but I don't think you start off at the top of the mountain, right?
No.
Sometimes, all the time, you have to start at the bottom of the mountain.
All the time.
In the valleys and the cracks sometimes.
Yeah.
So I know little bits and pieces of your story, but I just along with the community here, I'm about to hear it for the first time too.
Yeah.
Take us back. What was the childhood like? Because I know it wasn't always perfect.
Yeah. So I my mother was 15 when she had me.
Wow.
And it was 1968. So those, it was the Old Testament era.
Okay.
Our baby
Before
boomers.
Christ, the BC.
It was,
okay.
and it was just all this hellfire and brimstone, and if you don't do, you got to do it this way, this way, this way, this way for God to love you, right? And so that's how she was raised, and so I have to give her that. She didn't have it easy either, and so she had me at 15, and her parents said, we're putting up for adoption. And so immediately was taken to a foster home, and that's where I lived until 6 months. Wow. And we all know how important it is for mom and daughter, or mom and baby, to have that bonding period when the baby's born, right? Well, that didn't happen for me. She came and got me when I was 6 months old, but I can only imagine what it must have looked like, tearing me out of the only mother I knew, of her arms, and giving me to this woman who in her child mind was probably thinking I was crying for her and missing her and needing her. When she came to get me, in reality, I wanted nothing to do with her. So I think therein began the disintegration of that relationship, because she didn't come back from it, and then I just continued to suffer as a result. And I had a sister, and 13 months later she had another little girl, and she was able to keep her, and then she married my dad, and they had the nice little family, but my dad got arrested for selling drugs to undercover narcotics agents.
Oh, I hate those undercover cops.
Yeah, that was a bad day for him.
Yeah. Dang it.
Yeah, so he went to jail, and so mom had to go to work, and she got a job up in Monrovia, is where we were at, and across the street was a brokerage, and there was a man there who owned the brokerage. His name was Chuck Scruggs, and he was 45, and my mother was 19. And he came across the street to eat at where she was working and met her and decided to start courting her. And fine, right? I mean, age is age. You could see a little red flag there. But come to find out that he was going through a divorce. And he was not only going through a divorce, he was being run out of the state of California because he had just been caught raping his own daughters. Woo. Yeah. So his ex-wife came to my mother's work and said, listen, this is why we're divorcing, and you have 2 little girls, so you might want to reconsider. But she didn't, and she moved to Louisiana with him. And like all good pedophiles, they take you far, far away from people.
Yep. They
groom you. They prepare you for what they're about to do. So there was a lot of grooming in those early days. Eventually, we did get left here behind with my grandmas and aunts who took care of us, and she went to Louisiana with him. And when we would go back to visit, the abuse would start. The earliest remembrance I have of being sexually assaulted by him was 3.
You were 3 years old?
I was 3 years old, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was the kind of kid, I was just like, hey, guess what, Mom? And I was telling everybody. I wasn't the kind of kid who was keeping it a secret.
Wow.
But no one believed it. No one heard me. I was never heard. And so everybody went on with their lives, and eventually, by the time I was 7, we were moved out there to Louisiana to live with them. And then it became a daily basis. I was raped every single day from the time I was 7 until I was 14. I told her when I was 5, and I told my grandma when I was 5, and my grandma went to my mom and said, this is happening. And she said, my mom came to me and said, you need to go tell everybody that you're lying You need to stop telling such horrible lies about him and tell everybody you're lying. Now,
Was he manipulating them too?
He didn't have anything to do with them. He was manipulating my mother. You know, he had that, there was something, and I still to this day don't know what it was, you know, but there was some kind of power there. And so, and remember, she'd already been told by his ex-wife that he had raped his own daughters. So the fact that 2 years later a 5-year-old came and said it was happening would solidify it for me as a mother, right? For you as a father, you know, if we would have even let it go that far. So again, you know, I was not heard and my needs weren't met, and then again at 7, she walked in and saw it with her own eyes, and still just, you know, the next day, I remember coming out of my bedroom, and it's in the, you know, I'm writing a book, and I talk about it in the book, where I thought this was my day of salvation. You know, this is it. She saw it. How can you deny it then? And I remember coming out of my bedroom in my little pigtails at 7, my blonde hair, and my little white slip, and my little bunny slippers, and so excited to start the new journey. And I walked into the living room, and I turned to the right, and she was sitting on the couch with a drink in her right and a cigarette in her left. And I dropped my head the minute I saw her drinking. That's a whole other story. And she'd said to me, "I would not be able to look at me either if I were you." Yeah, and that had just come off of the fact she walked in and saw him, what he was doing. And I was blamed for it. So their trauma that happens to children as a result of sexual molestation, really, the sexual molestation is a very small part of the trauma. The biggest part of the trauma comes from not being believed, not being protected. And that is where the devastation comes from, because all of a sudden, you're not your own. My body doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of you, and you are allowed to do whatever you want to me. And so I had no boundaries. I did not have the ability to self-protect, obviously. You know, there was that piece, you know. So the next 7 years were just, I started writing a book, and she found it, and I was blamed for, you know, seducing him. So it was constantly, all my fault from the time I can remember.
Wow.
But not only was this happening with the sexual abuse, but she would come home every night drunk and drag me out of bed by my hair, because we weren't allowed to eat. We were only allowed to eat what was allotted in the home. She would leave for work, and she would make a list of the menu for dinner, and I was to cook dinner for the whole family. And then she would count the pickles. She would count the slices of bread, and she would mark the milk.
Good Lord.
Right.
Wow.
I know. So I was a little girl coming home from elementary school, and we were latchkey. We came home. She worked nights, and he didn't get home till like 5. So I was getting home around 3, and dinner wasn't until 5:30 or 6. I was starving. So I got my butt kicked a lot for eating pickles. You know, or I used to love mustard and pickle sandwiches. It was my favorite.
Okay.
I know, right? And there was two things I wasn't allowed to eat was pickles and bread.
Yeah. Do you still like pickles?
I love pickles.
Yeah.
And I love mustard, but I don't have sandwiches, pickles and mustard sandwiches.
What a bizarre thing for a mom to...
It was a control thing. There was a need to control. And over the, you know, in researching for the book and going back and looking at why, how, you know, I see that who we are. So my children, I have 4 children today, and nothing my children does projects onto me. Like if they go out and rob a bank, I'm not a bad mother because they robbed a bank. But that's the way she was. If I wasn't perfect, she was a bad mom. If I didn't look a certain way, act a certain way, speak a certain way, smell a certain way, do things a certain way, she reflected that all back on her.
Right.
And she was unable to, just didn't have the ability to raise children, you know, and for whatever. I mean, she's got 6 sisters, and they're all my aunts, and they're absolutely amazing women with beautiful children. I don't know what happened to her, but she was the one.
Do you still have a relationship with your mom?
No, I don't. And it's not because I haven't tried. You know, I loved her. I wanted so bad to be just like her. You know, there was a time when I started getting into junior high that my mom is beautiful, physically beautiful. And that I watched how people treated her because of her outside beauty. And so I said, that's how I have to be. I have to be pretty. People will love me if I'm pretty. People will love me if my hair looks like this, and if my clothes look like this, and if my makeup's like this. So at a very young age, I began sneaking her makeup and sneaking her clothes to school and sneaking and trying to become like her. Well, those actions by me ensued into one of the worst beatings that I had. I mean, this was an all-night thing. She came in. I was 13. And she pulled me out of bed. It was like her ritual. I used to be able to pull my hair out of my, clumps of hair in my hands. And but this night she pulls me out of bed and she looks at me and she goes, "Are you wearing my clothes and my makeup?" And I was.
And you knew it was coming.
I knew.
Huh?
And the thing was, you tell a lie, you tell the truth, you're gonna get beat. So I always lied first. Hopefully I'd get out of it. So in this, it didn't work. I admitted to it. And that night, she cut all my. I had beautiful long blonde hair, and I was 13. I'm in junior high, right? I'm just starting to notice boys. I'm just starting to want to be, all these things, right. Hormones and stuff. So that night, she cut off all my hair. She put a bowl on top of my head and cut the hair around the bowl. I had a black eye, bloody nose. Took all my clothes, all my makeup, all my shoes, put them in a bonfire in the backyard, and then she gave me a dress that belonged to me when I was probably in 4th grade. Was so tight I could barely breathe. The sleeves came up to here. It was a long sleeve dress, but the sleeves came up to here, and a pair of slippers, and stood with me until the bus came and made me get on the school bus and go to school.
God,
that way.
Horrible.
It was horrible. And I remember, and I speak about it, that was the moment when all hope died. I remember getting on that bus and walking down that aisle and the heads just turning to look at me, and I was so mortified. I was so ashamed, and my head dropped, and there was a hardening of my heart, a hardening of my soul, and I will never forget it. It was like, fine, if this is the way it has to be, I'm shutting down, and that's the moment I shut down. That was that beating.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is deep.
Yeah, but there were many, many, many beatings like that. She made me eat a pack of cigarettes. She's thrown hot grease all over me. It was tough. But did it stop? And so I ran away when I was 14. And I became a chronic runaway. I would leave my home when I was like 9. I needed to have some control. Mm-hmm. I had no control. Everyone was touching me and there was nothing. So what I would do to gain some semblance of control is I would pack a little bag in the middle of the night. Imagine a 10-year-old packing a little bag and I would walk the streets all night long, and I was running away. I'm gone. I'm done. I'm never coming back to that house. Well, before the light of the sun came up that morning, I would be back in my bed, and ready for the next day. So that's how my running away started. And towards the end of my running away career, I would run and hide in trees. No one could find me. They'd be underneath the tree calling my name, but I could still myself. So I just was a chronic runaway. I'd hide in cars. I'd hide in trees. I'd hide in closets. I'd hide under beds. I was hiding. I began to just hide from people. It was the only way I felt like I could protect myself, was to hide. So the last one of my trips, I was introduced to a youth shelter called Johnny Gray Jones, and it's in Louisiana. And she had actually called the police on me because she found out I was smoking cigarettes. But actually, my pedophile was plying me with cigarettes, but that was neither here nor there to them. So I was caught smoking cigarettes. She called the police and told them to come take me to juvenile hall because I was incorrigible. So the police came, and I'm thinking, this just can't even be happening.
Right.
This just isn't real. And so the police came and took me to juvenile hall.
Oh, by the way, why don't you take the pedophile with you?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right.
If we're gonna do this, let's do this.
Yes. And so, but they didn't take me to juvie. They took me to a place called Johnny Gray Jones. And I remember coming into this place, and I remember falling in love with it. I loved it there.
Because you weren't with your mom?
Because I wasn't with them. I was safe. But these girls were not nice. They belonged there. I didn't belong there, but I felt safe there. I loved the staff. So I began running away and calling the police and telling them I was a runaway, and they would take me back to Johnny Gray Jones. That's where I wanted to be. I never wanted to be anywhere else. But the unfortunate part, it was only a 72-hour hold. So at 72 hours, and by the time I was 12, I stopped telling people about him, because now I was ashamed. Now I thought it was me. Now I thought I was dirty, and it was my fault. And so I stopped telling people about him. And had I, looking back, he would have been. I mean, do you know that pedophiles today go to jail for life just if they have a minor touch them inappropriately, touch their penis? There's a life sentence.
Wow.
He would have gone to jail for life.
Wow.
Had someone listened to me, had I spoke up. So as I got older, the shame started setting in, and I stopped telling on him, but I was telling on her. She's beating me. She's doing this. She's doing that. She's doing that. And my mom is little, and she just doesn't look like that person, really. So she would come to court. The judge would find that maybe I was, a little incorrigible, and they'd always send me back. So on the third stint at Johnny Gray Jones, I ran away from Johnny Gray Jones, and it took me 2 weeks, but I got to California, and I never went back. And that's in the book. But that's a whole other story. And that's the story when I tell people about that story, they're like, oh my gosh, you got to write a book. Yeah. So that's part is in the book. And
you're not going to share it because you got to buy the book?
Adventure. I ran away with another girl, and we were... the thing is God just showed up. I mean, we were jumping in strangers' cars. They were giving us rides. They were giving us money.
And this is when the 70s,
this is
80s?
This is 1979.
And there was some craziness happening in that time. There was serial killers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But I was more safe on the streets than in my home.
Wow.
Yeah. So I ran away from Louisiana. I was able to get to California, and I stayed, and I got here and moved in with my dad. My dad's a great guy, but like you remember, he went to jail for selling drugs to an undercover narcotics officer. So the first thing he said to me when I got here was, "Here, smoke this, it'll help." I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my beginning of my journey with medicating. But I didn't speak to her until my first child was born. I ended up, I got here, and I started using methamphetamine, smoking weed, drinking alcohol. But it wasn't until I was introduced to methamphetamine that I said, this is my drug. This is it. I wasn't afraid of anything or anyone. It just took away everything. And I was king of the world. I could do anything.
Going from a broken and powerless feeling person to feeling that incredible rush, I'm sure it's got to be a wholly different effect.
It was something I had never experienced before. And I remember the first time using it thinking, this could be bad. This could be bad. And but unfortunately, everyone around me was doing it. My dad was doing it. It was just what they did. So I stepped into the life of drugs and alcohol, and I met my first husband he was my best friend's brother, and I was 17. I was 15 when I met him. 16 when we got married. I married my drug dealer. It was a little convenient. I didn't have a job, so what the heck.
Yeah.
And then at 17, I had my first baby. At 19, I had my second baby. And 21, I had my third baby. Wow. At 22, I was divorced and on welfare, living in Spring Valley, driving limos at night, trying to make ends meet. And all the while, she wasn't a part of my life at all. But I tried, when the babies started coming, I was like, because when you start having babies and stuff, I was like, I need my mommy, So I tried to bring her in. But so, I say her diagnosis is malignant narcissism, which is criminal narcissism. It's a narcissism that is a little criminal. That's what malignant narcissism means. And so it was never about anyone but her. It was just never about me. It was never about my babies. It was never. So the relationship was just, we didn't connect. And for 20 years, I was basically disconnected from her, which looking back, I'm super grateful for, because she's toxic and she's poisonous. And I had 20 years to break away from her. Granted, I was loaded, but still I was somehow, some way, the Lord was bringing me through.
Yeah.
He was. And my first, I'll tell you, my stepdad was the deacon in the church. I was memorizing scripture. They'd set us both down at the table, and we memorized the Lord's Prayer. They had us memorizing scriptures while they were drunk, And he used the story of Lot to condone what he did. Lot had sex with his daughters, so I'm allowed to have sex with you. God says it's okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was my, this is God to me. And then they're telling me when I was little that I needed to be I was on my way to hell. At 7, I was on my way to hell. And it was just all hellfire and brimstone. I was so scared.
Is this a Baptist background?
It was
kind of
I don't know if it was Baptist. I think it was more non-denominational. She was raised in the Gospel Hall, which I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a very strict, it's just very strict Christian upbringing. But my first experience with who I think Jesus is or God is, I remember looking out the window, and I was like 8 or 9, and I remember looking at the dark sky with the stars, and I just remember this encounter with something bigger than me, and I just felt a presence that I had never felt before. And I said to him, I said, God, if you're there, will you help me? And not long after that, I was taken to Mississippi, and he would do everything except for penetrate completely, because then you could, if something happened, then he could be caught. 8-year-old is still supposed to be a virgin. So he never went full until I was 14, and then that was going to 13. And I remember going to this trip to Mississippi with him, and this was the trip. He had told me, I'm going to make you a woman. You're going to, all these things, and I knew it was coming. And I remember laying in that trailer. He worked on oil rigs, and I remember he took me to this trailer out in this big oil field, and he had to go be with his guys, and so I was in the trailer, and he came back, and he smelled like Jack Daniels, which I can't be around Jack Daniels to this day, but he came in, and he started what he was going to do, and preparing me for this encounter. And I remember crying out, God help me, God help me, God help me. And he couldn't perform. It stopped. And he never took my virginity. Never. And that's who God, for a long time I was angry at God. And that's why, and I used that as an excuse to use drugs, right? So let me tell you about my life. I should be using drugs. It was my excuse. So, but God, looking back, the enemy is the prince and power of this earth. God is all supreme, but we live in a world where free will reigns, and they had free will, and unfortunately they use their free will to torment children. And is that them? It's spiritual warfare. I believe we live in a world, there's a world around us that we can't see.
Yep.
And I believe that they were empowered by that darkness, but there was something inside of me, and I just knew I had a deep sense that there was a different God out there, that there was something different than what they were teaching me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And God, in His gracious ways, has a way of working through all that noise of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And getting to you right when you need it.
Yeah. So He's been faithful, and today, in my talks with people and in my dealings with people, people say, why me? And why not? I'm nothing special, except for that. God took my brokenness, and now He's creating a message. He's taking my mess. He's taking their mess. He's taking my mess, and He's creating a message. And that's what He wants to do. Mm-hmm. Jesus walked on this earth for 33 years. Mm-hmm. They had the privilege of being close up, face to face with Him. We don't have that privilege anymore. But we have the Holy Spirit who resides inside of us. Mm-hmm. And we are God's hands and feet. So who better to go out there and talk to a broken little girl than a broken little girl? A broken woman than a woman who's broken. You can't, no one understands what you're going through unless you've gone through it.
Right.
So praise be to God that I have this message, because 1 in 3 girls are being sexually assaulted by somebody they know right now, and 1 in 7 boys. And in 68, the statistics are 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys. Nothing's changed in 50 years.
Wow.
40 years. Nothing's changed. except for the statute of limitations. So when I came home from Louisiana, when I got to California from Louisiana, I decided at 25 or 26 that I was 29, because that's when I got clean. I was going to file charges against him. And the statutes of limitations ran out at 18 plus 10 years. So at 28, my statute of limitations ran out. I couldn't do anything. But now the statute of limitations in Louisiana is 18 plus 30 years. So that's changed. There should be no statute of limitations on sexual crime. The only reason they have a statute of limitations on sexual crime is because it's hard to prove later down the road. But I mean, I'm not the only one, and I know that for sure. So, go ahead.
So with this message, and I truly believe that God will take broken situations and do something absolutely incredible. Like that's his business. That's what he loves to do, right? Yeah. So you actually have a curriculum that you're putting together and getting into schools. So can you talk about that? So
the curriculum's actually already been written by a lady named Sandy. So the curriculum's there. In 2013, Aaron Marin had Aaron's Law passed in California, and it says that it makes it mandatory for the schools to consider this curriculum for their classrooms, just to consider it. It's not mandatory to do it. So what I'm doing, and this is why. When I was in elementary school, when I was 5 and 6, and this was happening to me, I thought it was happening to little Bob and Sally too. I'm like, this is happening in everybody's home. I didn't know it wasn't. And then as I got older, I realized that I was different and that I was bad, because this was happening to me. If we had this curriculum, and it's a 5-day curriculum, it's like Red Ribbon Week or Dare Week at school. And it teaches K through 5th grade. Every year they'll have it again. They have this special week. And it just teaches our kids what the difference is between inappropriate touch and appropriate touch. And it does it by storytelling and puppets. And there's no real... it's not too explicit.
Age appropriate.
It's age appropriate. It teaches our teachers how to recognize it. It teaches the schools what to do, the best way to handle it. So the curriculum is just an all-around curriculum. But I'm telling you, if we had this curriculum in our schools, there wouldn't be gymnastic teams wondering if their doctor was touching them inappropriately.
I remember that story.
We wouldn't have girls in college that didn't understand that their college doctor or their sports doctor shouldn't have touched them that way, if they had learned this in K through 5th grade. So my goal is to bring this curriculum into the schools, strongly urge our schools to consider this curriculum, however, with whatever means I have possible, and to get this in the hands. And I have a nonprofit called One Voice, One Mission. We just got our nonprofit status in October, and we're paying for it. We'll pay for all of the curriculum. So finances can't be the reason, and we all know schools are broke, right? We can't afford anything, so that can't even be the reason. But I just feel like this is my message for this time. Everyone has been given a message for their time. #MeToo has set the stage for this. Everything that's blossoming as a result of all that's happening with the #MeToo movement is setting the stage for this. If I had tried to put this curriculum in schools 20 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been a lot harder than it's going to be today. But now that, we have a generation, and they're called millennials, right? They get the worst rap. But I'll tell you what, they aren't standing for no one's crap anymore. They aren't keeping secrets. They're standing up and they're saying no more to the secrets and the lies and the traumas that have been passed down to us from these previous generations. And and that's what the baby, God bless them. That's all they knew. But they're just full of secrets. Don't talk about what's happening in our home. Don't tell. There should be no secrets like that in our homes.
Well, especially just something so vile and evil. Yeah. I mean, good Lord. And it just baffles me. And first of all, thank you so much for sharing that and being vulnerable and just, I could tell you're healed and stuff like that, but when someone hears that on the other end, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I can't, and then you hear the rest of your story about the addiction and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. I get it. Yeah. But, and then God just has that beautiful way of taking that mess and creating a message. That's incredible. Yeah, he has. He's done an amazing work. I was a meth addict for 14 years. Long time. And you have all your teeth. That's good.
I do. I have all my teeth.
got
and,
lucky.
So God, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't look like an ex-tweaker, which is
Thank goodness,
great,
because
right?
you could tell.
Yeah. I smoked cigarettes for 27 years.
Wow.
I drank alcohol for about that long too, alcoholically. So the drugs, and it's been a layering process. I got clean at 29 because I was thrown into Las Colinas Women's Detention Facility, and I thought I was going away for a year. I had warrants out for my arrest right and left, and it's just a really great story. That I was in there. I had been up for about 8 days, and I actually went to jail because I was loaded, right, and I wanted to go get more. I needed to go supply up, and the man I was married to at that time wouldn't let me. So I decided, in my infinite wisdom, that I would start a fight with him, and that we would get into this altercation, and then I would have him arrested so I could go get loaded.
That's some tweaker thoughts,
That's
right?
That's a tweaker thought. So what happened? They took me to jail.
Oh, wow.
And, it was God. It was so God, because on the third day when I finally woke up in that prison, one of the women came to me, big, burly black woman, and motherly and Aunt Jemima-ish, and she's like, "What you in for?" And I told her, and she goes, "Your first time?" And I said, "Yep." She goes, "It won't be your last." She goes, "We always come back." And that stopped me in my tracks. I had 3 babies at home that I needed to be there for. I mean, my kids were 12, 10, and 8 by now. And they had only known a tweaker mother. And there was, I just knew that I couldn't come back. So what could I do? How could I not come back here? And as I went through the process, and I went through the hearings, and I went through in front of the judges, during that time in there, this lady brought me a book. And it was called The Power of Prayer by Stormy O'Martin. And I started reading the book, and in the book it said, "In all things be grateful, no matter what." And I said, right. I'm supposed to be grateful that I'm sitting in jail and I'm looking at a year of incarceration while my kids are at home. Mm-hmm. And it said, "All things be grateful." So I said, okay. And I got down on my knees, and I thanked God for being in there at that time. And I thanked him for everything that he was doing in my life. And 8 days later, I was let out. I remember hearing over the loudspeaker, they said, "Parada," my name was Parada at the time. They said, "Parada, roll up." And I'm like, "Who? Is that me?" And they're like, "Get out of here, girl, you're going home." And I never went back. That was the year I got clean from meth, and that was the year. And then I came out, when I got out of jail, I found I was pregnant with my 4th child, Alexis. So it was just, God intervened. And I'm reading this book now called You're a Badass. It's a really great
Jen
book.
Sincero?
Yeah, it's a really great book. And it talks about, if you need the universe or God to create a huge situation to get your life turned around, it'll happen. Mm-hmm. But it's, most of us don't want the bad thing to happen to get better, right? But it's been, jails, and then, but when I quit drinking alcohol, I didn't have to go to jail, which was good. I was, at 39, I was diagnosed with early asthma and the beginning stages of lung issues from all the years of smoking, and and then the drinking. So I was trying to quit smoking, but then every time I had a drink on Friday, I'd want a cigarette. So this whole thing of quitting smoking was great until I had a drink. So I figured, okay, maybe I just need to quit drinking for a while. So I decided to go to AA and have them help me quit smoking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was like, I'm just here to quit smoking.
As everybody else there.
I know, they're like, okay. I said, I don't have a drinking problem. The problem is that I smoke when I drink.
Yeah.
So, and the problem is I really like to have margaritas on the weekends. So will you guys help me not drink on the weekends just for 1 year? And then after I haven't had a drink for 1 year, and I haven't had a cigarette for 1 year, I'm going to go back to drinking, but I just won't be a smoker anymore. That was my plan. I never intended on quitting alcohol. I mean, life would end if you didn't drink. That was my thought. And so a year passed, and I was like, this feels pretty good. So now I have 12 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
Congratulations.
it's been a journey. I'm a tough-headed girl. I'm not the kind of person who just lays it all down. I'm like, yeah, I'll give you this, God, but I'm going to keep this over here, and I'm going to keep this.
He's like, what's behind your back?
I know.
He already knows, but he's going to ask you
mind.
anyways. Yeah.
Please, Lord, please.
Yeah.
I just want to fit in. I just want to be normal. I just want to be like everybody else, It's been my thing, but, someone said to me recently, stop trying to fit in, and because you stand out. Yeah.
That's a powerful statement right there. Stop trying to fit
it
in 'cause
helped
you
me a lot.
stand out.
Yeah.
So speaking of standing out, you stop putting chemicals and junk into your body, and then you start working on your body.
Did.
So you're the ripped realtor.
I am.
# ripped realtor.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that?
So it came out of a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So I was married. My first marriage was 7 years. That was to my drug dealer. And then my second marriage was 20 years. And the first 5 were great. But the last 15 were hell. Because unfortunately, you know, people think opposites attract, but they don't. You attract the mirror image of who you are. Even subconsciously, you'll attract who you are. That's what the universe does. It gives us what we put out. Yeah. And so I was a drug addict and he was an alcoholic. So we had a lot of trauma in those early years. And then we both got sober the last 5 years of our marriage. And we went to boot camps and everything. And you know what? God can heal marriages. But I just don't think that I didn't surrender enough. And I was too traumatized from all of the trauma, from the marriages and from the abuse from the homes. And I just had to get out. I had to be single. I'd never been single. I went straight from this home to this marriage to that marriage. Never once had I ever lived on my own. And here I was, 44, single. My 3 kids are grown, the older ones, and I have a 14-year-old at home. And so I had a lot of extra time and the business is running smoothly. And I had always gone to the gym. Like I'd walk out of spin class and light up a cigarette. You know, I just went to the gym since I was 25, but I wasn't healthy and I definitely wasn't fit. But it helped me with my anxiety. So that's, I used that a lot for that. And so I was on the computer right after the divorce, a few months, and a girlfriend that I had worked out with several years before, I saw her on Facebook, on stage, in a bikini with high heels and a sword and a trophy. And she looked amazing. Yeah. And I reached out to her and I said, how did you do that? And that's Sky. She does the wellness minute with me. And I said, Sky, how did you do that? I said, I want to look just like that. She goes, oh, you want to do a show? I said, no, I don't want to do a show. I want to look like I could do a show. So she put me on this meal plan that she had. And, I was relatively, by that time I had 5 years clean and sober and not smoking and stuff. But I had mommy muscle that I've been doing in all the classes. So it was covered by a few inches of fat. And I started on this plan that she had, and all of a sudden my body started to change. And so by March of that next year, she's like, you sure you don't want to do a show? And I'm like, and I had all the Christian dogma in my head, and
about what, pride or something?
Of causing other men to stumble by being in a bathing suit on stage. And all those Christianese things were coming at me, And I'm not saying they're wrong. I just was, in my heart, that wasn't my heart. My heart wasn't to get up there and make you look at my butt. My heart was to get up there and win a trophy, and to compete, because I'm so competitive. Like, I'm going to be the best at everything. And so I did it, and I won first place. It was in May of 2013, and I was competing at 44 against the 30-year-olds.
Wow.
And I won first place.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Talk about a high.
Yeah,
that
right?
was like a high. That was like, I want to feel that again.
You go to Denny's, you're like, you know what I just did? I won a trophy against 30-year-olds. Okay?
Yeah, I know. I was pretty stoked. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. I felt so accomplished, and granted, I had given up all these things, but it felt like I had given them up because the world had forced me to. The things had come against me, opposition, health scares and jail and DUIs, and so I'm like, so I had an addiction to sugar. I couldn't stop. Sometimes I'd say, okay, I'm going to eat this on Sunday, and by Wednesday I was still eating. Yeah. And so I had this inability to control my food now. So what the competing did was show me that I could control it. I could be in control of my life. My life did not have to be in control of me. And I had power. And so by competing, I got some of my power back, and I went on to continue competing because obviously I was looking, for that. I just, wanted that that rush again. And I loved being on stage, and I loved the women, and I loved the camaraderie, and I loved the gym. Like, I could live at the gym. The people there were all there with us. You can be in a room, this huge arena room. Everybody's in there. We all have headphones on, and we're all just doing our own thing. You know, no one really talks. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. It's like a big family. You know, so I really love being there. I love the energy and the vibe. And I continued to compete until last year. And every show I won the top 3.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it had things gone differently. I was a volleyball player when I was in school, and I was good at it. And I was teaching myself gymnastics and dances and, you know, doing all these things on my own time by myself. So I was very athletic. But as you know, my childhood didn't, you know, really push me in that direction.
Sure.
So I felt that I was able to get back some of my athleticism and some of that I had lost by competing. At 44, it's really hard to go be a famous volleyball player, you know, or any, you know, runner or anything.
Just to do any, I mean,
Right.
you know, a lot of times, you know, physical abilities, they kind of decline over the years and stuff like that. But here you are at this new chapter, and you're like just embracing it.
Yeah.
The champion. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And so my last show I did was Venice Beach, and I won 4th and 5th place, and that was it. I'm not competing anymore, but I'm just going to look like I can.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So you had an incredible life, great journey. A great journey by meaning you've survived the journey. It wasn't great by any means as far as some of the hell that you went through.
Yeah.
But it just sounds like there's such a wonderful message from that mess, and I love that saying today.
Yeah.
So what's in the future here for you?
So here I am in my, you know, I'm 50, and I feel like it being of service is going to be the next stage of my life.
Right.
Giving back. You know, I've taken a lot. You know, I've been a taker the majority of my life up until the last 12 years, and I want to give back. I work with women in AA. Obviously, I'm a sponsor. I have sponsees, and I have, you know, speaking engagements. I speak at Oak Grove sometimes and work with those girls there. So I feel like now it's just giving back. You know, the 12th step tells us, you know, once we get through the steps, the 12th step tells us to keep it, we have to give it away. So now I'm in the process of just giving it away. And whatever that looks like. So if I could dream big and no holds barred, I want to be a speaker. I want to be on stage in front of 1,000 women. I want to tell them that they don't have to be a statistic. I don't want to tell them that there's a better way. There's a different way. I want to tell them about Jesus. I want to share with them the gospel. Because ultimately without God, I'm nothing. It was Him who brought me through this, you know, and all the while, all the hiccups, all the stuff, the side steps and the detours I took, He's using them all to be part of the story. I mean, there is not one woman that I couldn't sit down and minister to. I mean, I've done it all.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's going to be giving back. It's about being of service. And, you know, I'd like to look back at 80 and see this curriculum in every school nation worldwide.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely firmly believe that is going to happen. And I can't wait to watch your story unfold. I can't wait for your book to come out.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see you on stage.
Thank you.
Catherine, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story at the Red Tide community.
Thank you.
Powerful.
Thanks, John.
Truly powerful.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, folks, that's it. Wow. No matter where your life is right now, if it's a mess, you can create a message out of that. God can do all things. So, Catherine, you're fantastic. It's going to be amazing. And that's it for this episode of the Red Tide Community with the Ball Guy and the Red Tie. See you next time. Bye-bye.